Ancient societies painted death as a shadowy god. Medieval Europe imagined skeletons leading kings and peasants in the danse macabre, and modern psychology reminds us that death is not an accident of life. It is its very condition. Among all humanity, there is one kind who has the courage to laugh at death, to mock the inevitable, and in doing so, to reveal a deeper wisdom. And this has been described by Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. The kind he was talking about is, paradoxically, the fool, the jester, the clown, the trickster. In this video, I will discuss how the fool, through humor and folly, forces us to confront mortality, how death, the ultimate archetype, gives weight to the fool's irreverence, and how together these two archetypes dance in myth, literature, and philosophy. By the end, you'll see how facing death with the fool's laughter can transform fear into wisdom. So let's get into it. From jesters in royal courts to today's comedians, the fool has always been with us, mocking, teasing, and revealing hidden truths. Carl Jung called the trickster, or fool, an archetype of the collective unconscious, an eternal state of mind that dwells within every person. This archetype is deeply paradoxical. The fool is subhuman in his childishness and recklessness, yet superhuman in his freedom to shatter conventions. He is the one who blunders and provokes, yet in doing so, he carries a strange wisdom. Trickster is both prankster and divine guide of souls, hovering between laughter and death itself. This grotesque duality is precisely what makes the fool dangerous and necessary. Jung warned that the civilized man has forgotten the trickster, relegating him to jokes and cliches. But the fool lurks in the shadow of every psyche, that wild and disruptive force we'd rather not see in ourselves. His gift is truth-telling through subversion. Shakespeare's jesters knew this well, cloaking uncomfortable truths in laughter. In King Lear, the fool boldly exposes Lear's vanity, cutting through delusion with humor sharper than any sword. As many traditions remind us, fools always speak the truth. Not because they are noble, but because they cannot sustain the polished lies of the powerful. Paradoxically, the fool often carries deeper wisdom than the so-called wise. Dostoevsky observed that the one who admits his own foolishness stands closest to wisdom. The medieval wise fool and the Eastern holy fool embodied this very paradox. In seeming madness lay higher insight. Socrates, too, played the fool, declaring only that he knew nothing. In Jungian language, the fool acts like a mirror, reflecting our hidden follies and exposing the cracks in our certainty. When we laugh at the fool's antics, we often realize we are laughing at ourselves. The fool's role, then, is not trivial. He interrupts the seriousness of ego, mocks rigid rules, and reveals uncomfortable truths. Within this archetype lies a reminder of balance. We must learn to laugh at ourselves, for in that laughter we find humility and insight. The fool teaches us that wisdom does not always arrive clothed in solemnity. Sometimes it stumbles in, trips over itself, and laughs in the face of death. Jung considered death no less archetypal than birth, for it belongs to the universal human story. Across every culture, myth, and religion, death appears not merely as an end, but as a figure shaping meaning itself. Jung warned that ignoring death distorts the psyche, for the unconscious holds death as a living presence within us. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he wrote that at midlife one must face the question of death directly, by engaging symbols and myths of dying, rather than being crushed by unconscious fear. For Jung, death is not an end, but a goal, a natural direction of life's movement. Marie-Louise von France echoed this, noting how the unconscious seems to expect continuity, as though the soul believes in its own rebirth beyond the body. Human beings have long created rituals to tame this shadow. In medieval Europe, plagued by famine and plague, the church taught the ars boni moriendi, the art of dying well. Through skulls, hourglasses, and images of dancing skeletons, people were reminded of mortality in the Memento Mori. Villagers even attended wakes where they witnessed decay, forcing themselves to look into the abyss without flinching. The aim was not despair, but liberation. If the soul journeyed on, then death was a doorway rather than a void. In the East, the Tibetan Book of the Dead guided souls through the bardo, preparing them for enlightenment after death. Both traditions understood a psychological truth: facing mortality consciously frees us. Philosophers, too, have spoken this wisdom. Seneca warned that people waste life as if time were infinite, forgetting each day could be their last. His counsel was a constant memento mori. Heidegger later insisted that authenticity is possible only when one accepts mortality, his concept of being toward death. Jung, however, chose a middle way. We need a myth of death, not only rational reflection, to carry us into it with meaning. The psyche itself assists, producing dreams and visions of death and rebirth, often around midlife, as though preparing the soul for its destiny. So according to Carl Jung, death is an archetype that brings both fear and transformation. When denied, it leaves us fractured, living against our instincts. When faced, it grounds us in honesty and depth. And as we will soon see, when death and the fool meet, terror and laughter whirl together in a dance that strips away illusion and reveals what truly matters. Of how many a man may it not be said that hope made a fool of him until he danced into the arms of death? This line captures the tragic irony of existence. Hope often blinds us, leading us unintentionally into death's embrace. In one Polish painting, women from empress to fool clasp hands with skeletons, revealing that rank, wealth, or wisdom cannot shield anyone from death's invitation. Yet the fool often appears at the forefront of these depictions, bells jingling at death's side. His presence reminds us that humor and mortality are bound together, that laughter echoes even at the grave. In mythology, the trickster often ushers in death or transformation. Jung warned that suppressing this chaotic energy can destroy us, for denying the trickster is like strangling the very instincts that keep the psyche alive. Psychologically, this dance with death is the experience of mortificatio, the death of the ego. Jung compared it to alchemical transformation. Matter must decay before it can be renewed. Likewise, outdated illusions, ambitions, and false identities must die so that the self can emerge. The fool leads this process, exposing hypocrisy with ridicule, shattering masks with mockery, and forcing the ego to surrender. In laughing at our own absurdities, we experience a symbolic death of self-deception, a painful cracking of the shell that allows something greater to be born. Even in daily life, this interplay reveals itself in tragicomedy. A clown whose laughter turns to tears, or a coward made ridiculous in the face of danger, jolts us into remembering death's nearness. The fool, standing on that mountain of laughter, dares to salute death with a grin. Rather than fear, he offers irony. Rather than despair, he offers perspective. By mocking death's finality, the fool transforms dread into insight and wisdom, showing that to embrace mortality is to discover how to live more fully. When the fool finally dances with death, the negativity like ego and everything alike crumbles. What remains is humility, the recognition that life's greatest mysteries, love, meaning, mortality, are beyond our control. Cultures across the world preserved this figure of the holy fool. In Russia, wandering fools broke social taboos in the name of divine truth, while Native American clowns mocked order to reveal hidden wisdom. These figures unsettled those around them, yet in their absurdity, people glimpsed something sacred. Even in therapy today, Jungians note how laughter in the face of pain can mark a turning point. When a patient laughs at the horror of a dream, the psyche shows that something deeper has shifted. The ego has bowed, and the self has begun to shine through. Philosophy and poetry echo the same truth. Confucius warned that fearing to look foolish stunts wisdom. Rumi pictured God's laughter shaking off formality like a dance, Jung compared this rebirth of consciousness to alchemy. Only when matter putrefies can gold emerge. Likewise, when parts of us die, false pride, outdated ambitions, self-deception, a new self rises, freer and more alive. The fool's final lesson is not despair but transformation. By wearing the cap of foolishness with dignity, one sees through vanity, embraces limits, and finds peace in transience. Death ceases to be a terror and becomes part of the rhythm of existence. The fool's laughter softens the grave's silence, and death's certainty gives depth to the fool's play. The dance of these two archetypes reveals a final wisdom. Life is fleeting, yet beautiful precisely because it ends. We are called not to run from death nor deny our folly, but to laugh at both. And in that laughter, glimpse eternity, just like Haruki Murakami said, "Death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it."